ran was underwater. I mean, shore ran there. I've known people that lived on Bridge Street. And one woman, Annie Lawton, she used to paint china and fix it so it wouldn't, when you put your fingers on it, it wouldn't take off, you know. She used to tell about going across the street, getting in the boat and rowing down across the water to the stores on 10th Street. And another woman I know used to tell about her aunt or her grandmother, I don't know which it was, that used to go out in the backyard and go up on the pier and go fishing off of Bridge Street. So you see the water was in there and it was pretty deep. Well, they put Long Wharf out and they intended to extend it, but then they had to get a bridge somehow. So back in the around the 1740 somewhere, a man was picked out to go to see about getting a bridge. And he sent away to Holland to get a movable bridge and a windmill. Well, unfortunately it didn't work. And they finally got a swing bridge in there and placed it in, and of course so the boat could go through. But ships used to go through that and they would have docks. There were 17 wharves between Bridge Street and Long Wharf. There were 17 different wharfs on that water. And they were big enough so that schooners could come in there. I have pictures of it split in half showing the east-west side of the water with the railroad train at the depot. Of course, all Cardenas Field was all water too, I think. So that was an interesting, that lets you know when it wants to go off.
No, that's that.
Was that him doing it? Oh, I thought it was that thing.
No. Wait, let me get this one taken.
We had cemeteries on to the east of us and cemeteries behind us. Of course, the cemetery behind us wasn't quite so interesting as the one that was to the east of us because that was the old cemetery. And there's so many odd gravestones up there. I get a kick out of every time I see them and read them. Yeah?
You were telling me about Bridge Street. When did they fill in that area now?
What do you mean, take the bridge out?
Yeah, no, the area between Bridge Street and Long Wharf. When was that filled in?
Well, I think they filled it in after the railroads come here.
I see.
Around 1869, 68, somewhere through that time. Gladys Bolthouse could tell you better when the railroads were here than I can, because I don't know.
Now, is the house that you lived in, number 7 Walnut Street, still standing?
Nope.
Oh.
That's gone. On that side of the bridge, and the houses on the north side of the street is gone. They're all gone. Plus, a stonecutter shed was down on the corner of the bottom of the hill, around to Elmer Sweet.
So did you live in that house until you decided to move to Middletown? And tell me about your children. Tell me about your children. You have
well,
children.
Alan, I've only got 2 children, Alan and Norma. Norma works in Maryland, Pocomoke City. Alan works at the waterworks in Newport. And one of his sons is still in Newport, but the rest of them are all out of town. Except one that's living with him. He isn't married yet. But they've all moved out of town. One of them's in Worcester, Massachusetts. He's teaching at college up in New Hampshire. He's a pianist. And one girl lives in Buffalo, New York. Another one has just moved down to South Carolina. And Susan. Mm.
How many children does Alan have?
6.
Six. Did they all have your interest in music?
Mark has, of course. He has an extreme interest in music. And David, too. David plays in a jazz band. But Mark plays concert pianist if he wants to be. If he can go into that space. But he has a group, too. But the wrong whistling sometimes. I don't know why. Mark married a Greek girl. Then my other grandson, Paul, he married an Italian girl, and they live down in Connecticut now. Joel, of course, he's the unmarried one. He's only about 16 years old. He hasn't made up his mind what he's going to do. He started out in music, but he gave it up and just completely dropped it. I never see anybody change their mind so fast as he did.
Your daughter, what is your daughter's name?
Mama.
Norma.
Yeah. She married a man named Foltz. Gus Foltz. He calls himself, his name of course is August. He's an electrician. And they live on the east shore of Maryland, in Pocono City. And he has a big contract with all the electricians to even the town people as far off as Baltimore. He's doing very well on that.
Do they have children?
Two girls. One lives in Pocono with her, where she lives, and not with her, but at the same time. The other one lives in New Mexico. To get into. And the one lives in New Mexico. I think I told you that. Her daughter is the one that speaks Spanish, and she had, when she started learning language, she's speaking, got them all balled up together. But now I understand that she's speaking English to her mother and Spanish to her grandparents.
So you have quite a few grandchildren and some and a great grandchild.
I have only 3 great-grandchildren. Mark is a baby. Mark is a baby boy. And David, I think. David has a boy named Royal. Norma has his 2 girls. There's 1, 2, 3. Karen has 3 children, and Terry only has 1. No, Terry's got 1. Norma's got, Susan's got 2 children. She's got Teresa. Incidentally, Teresa was born the same year as I was. I mean the same month. February the 9th. Which isn't too far away.
No, it isn't. Going back to when you and your wife were raising your family, I don't think I asked you what your wife's name was.
Tabby Anna Allen. AAA. And we took Allen's name because he was the first born. His first name was Allen. His middle name was White. His last name was his name.
When your wife was raising children, did she have any time for activities outside the home?
Oh, she used to play piano.
She was musical too.
There wasn't any great activity. Once in a while, if I had a solo to sing at some small concert like that, some small thing, I didn't like it. She was cool and play piano. But if I had a big concert, I was singing anyway. Carol Ball, the director of Swanhurst, I used to get him, because he used to live on the foot of the street on Walnut Street. He lived on 3rd Street, but it was at the foot of Walnut Street. And I used to, of course I took lessons from him, you see. He was the one that taught me everything I knew about singing. That's a picture of the troubadours up there.
Oh, yes.
And there's only two of them still living
Hmm.
that I know of.
Now, when did you move to Middletown?
You know, that's a question I can't answer because I don't know. I think we lived out there about 6 years and came over here.
When your children were young?
Right?
Were your children young then, or?
Young they were.
What made you decide to move back?
Huh?
Why did you move back?
Well, Dad left me this house and the one across the street,
Mm-hmm.
and it was occupied by Navy people. And I had a big argument with the wife to move over here because she didn't want to leave over there. I'm sorry now that we left because here we are on a second floor, and I'd like to have been all on one floor, and that was the 14th floor right there. But she finally gave in to me, and I don't know if she's ever forgiven me, but we moved over here.
And how long have you been in this house?
That's 6 years,
Mm-hmm. Now, did your father build these houses for himself and family, or to sell, or?
Well, they sold them pretty fast after they
Mhm.
built them, although Uncle Art and Aunt Anna, his wife, she lived in about all of them at different times. I think we went to try them out, but I don't know the idea. I don't know. We never was. But she died in this brick house across the way. That was the last one that she owned. But this house next door was moved from the back of St. John's Church. It was the stable for the Colville house, which is across the street from St. John's Church. This was the stable, and Mrs. Colville, Robert's mother, she insisted on buying this lot and moving it up here, and she did. She had all sorts of trouble with the movers because it came up in one piece,
Mm-hmm.
and they had to cut wires down and everything else to get up. Trees, branches were in the way and all that kind of thing. So it's up here, and they've just finished restoring it and putting it back into shape now. She's got the downstairs occupied, and they live on the second floor.
Hmm.
She's quite a little historian too. She's a historian for the Green Light.
Oh, and what is her name?
Elizabeth Colville.
Elizabeth Colville. Oh.
She's not a Newporter, but she's King Colville, her brother-in-law, was a good historian, and he knew an awful lot about the New England Steamship Company. In fact, that museum up in Fall River has all his stuff that he had about the New England Steamship Company. That was another big organization that was here in that one time.
Yes, I know that.
Because he used to come down from Fall River and go to New York to
Mm-hmm.
and stop over here at night, pick up passengers and freight. And they had quite a long run before they went out of business. It was the unions that put them out of business too.
Yeah. And there were businesses on the point that were connected with the
Oh, sure. Yeah, they were. There was a house right across the street that's standing down there. We used to know it in the old days as the Keeley boarding house, where the men that worked and they didn't have any house,
Mm-hmm.
they lived there in that boarding house.
Mm.
And it was quite a business they had. Of course, that's all gone. From Marsh Street down on the east side, there's nothing at all anymore. There were all houses in there one time. I can't remember all of them, but I can remember that one. And there was so much change on Long Wharf too. There were houses out there. The practically the whole length of the wall. Somehow, you get them out there, put them on rafts, I guess, I don't know. Seem to be that way anyhow.
Yeah. Do you have a special feeling about this area of the point?
Oh, sure. Been born and brought up here, I wouldn't feel anything any different, you know. It was nice to live out there in Middletown. It was nice. And we enjoyed it. But I was satisfied to be back on the point. Of course, the older gang is all gone. There's nothing left now. Well, I've got a younger cousin and so forth. I'm the oldest one in the group, living today. I'll be hitting 80 on the 9th.
This next week. Oh, so it's a very special birthday.
Yeah.
Oh, that's wonderful.
And little Doris is hitting 4.
That's wonderful.
She's a cutie. She looks just like her mother. Redhead. And Susan used to say her hair wasn't red, it was gold. But it's red. It's red as a beet, and it's long, hangs way down here. And they've just bought a house. She married a sailor, and they've just bought a house in Wichita, South Carolina. They're just good into it. Well, not just, but anyway.
Well, it's interesting that people do have such strong feelings, a real sense of neighborhood.
Oh, I think everybody has that. I've never run into anybody that didn't have. They may say things against it once in a while and get mad at somebody.
Did most of your friends live here on the point, or were there other parts of town too?
No, I think most of the friends that I had lived on the point. I haven't had too many friends until I got out amongst people like I did with the Swanhurst group like that. Of course, I knew those fellows in that group so well, you know. I see one of them every once in a while now. There's only 2 of us left, as they say. Jim Edwards, he used to be the manager of the Newport Daily News, and I see him once in the dog cage, you know. The other man is living in, I think, we don't know where he is, or whether he's still alive or not, I don't know. He was living in Providence last I know of him. Whether he's still there or not, I don't know.
Tell me a bit about your experiences with the artillery company.
Oh, well, I joined the artillery company in 1961. And as I had never had any military training, I felt kind of foolish in being in it. And I felt foolish still when they started to raise my rank up in the company. Because I was sometimes talking to people that had earned that rank that I had, and I had never had any idea what the rank was about or anything else, except that I knew it was going higher and higher all the time. John Loft, who's a school teacher here in Newport, and he's head of the Colony House right now. He got me into it. And I told him, I said, John, I don't know anything about this military stuff. Oh, who does? He said, there's a lot of the guys down there don't know anything about it. He said, come on and join it. Well, I said, I'll go down and I'll look at it over. So, Colonel St. John, who was commanding officer at the time, he called me up one night. He says, I want you to come down, he says, and be a guide for people coming in to see the museum. I said, well, okay, I'll come down. So I went down and I met him. I had never met him before. And he was a heck of a fine man. And I stayed there for quite a while with him, talking, and So finally and he says, well, if you want to join the company, then how about next year? Okay. So in 1961, I joined the company. And when Colonel Loss became the commanding officer of the company, and I can't tell you where that was, I was assistant curator before that. I was made full curator. And I stayed with it for 20 years. I got out of it in 1980. I had to because this leather mining thing, you know what to tell you. So, when I got down there, I found that they had a lot of American stuff, but no foreign stuff at all. So I got a bug in my bonnet because I used to have the museum down on Bellevue Avenue and in Walnut Street. I had my own bit there.
What museum is that?
Well, I called it the Museum Bookshop. It was a combination bookshop and museum. It wasn't very big, I'll tell you that. It was only in the south, and there wasn't too much room there. But anyhow, then I went out to Balsam Avenue, and I just cut the bookshop out completely and just had a museum out there. I didn't have any name for it. But when I moved from there, coming to this house, I found that I couldn't have a museum here at all. There was no room. So I gave 95% of my stuff to the artillery company. And the other parts I sold. And, well, you can see the walls there. What's left of it. Then I started writing to these foreign countries. I was writing to this one and that one. And finally one day we were talking together down there at Singapore. Somebody said, I wonder what would happen if we wrote to Montgomery. There's only one way to find out, right to him. Oh, we don't have his address. Because I can find it. Well, I had a friend in England at the time. He's in Saudi Arabia right now. And I wrote to him and asked him if he'd give me Marty's address. So he did. And I wrote to Marty. Asked him to possibly get one of the uniforms. I think I said this before. It came so quick that I thought he was out in the backyard with a package in his hand, wondering what we're going to do with it. Well, since that time, we've had correspondence with Mountbatten, Prince Philip, Ho Van Vien of Vietnam, who sent us a uniform and a beautiful box, silver-colored, soot-colored, I mean, stuff. And, I don't know, the places we haven't hit. We've hit places that I didn't even know existed. This friend of mine in England, he knew every place, I guess, in the country, in the world. He would send me addresses to say, right to so-and-so and so-and-so. And I would, and you know, I would get results from it. And I don't know, I still don't know where the places are, some of them. Sharjah.
Where is that? What?
Something.
Africa?
Arabian Sea somewhere. And Ras Al Khaimah, another place that's out there in that neck of the woods somewhere. I don't know where they are. We got a constabulary hat from the governor of St. Helena. And a very fine letter came with it. Of course, all my correspondence is down the army. We've got things down there that you wouldn't believe. I think we've got 28 regimental guard uniforms from different countries. 28. Two are from Morocco. They weren't satisfied sending one, they had to send two. Mexico was the same way. Mexico sent two, not only sent the uniforms, but they sent the mannequins. I thought that when they started coming with them, they had coffins. I didn't know what the heck they had. Of course, you know, your own boxes. Here was one was a Guards regiment of Mexico, and the other one was a buck private from the same outfit. And what we got from Monaco, we got Margaret Thatcher's autographed picture down there. We got a letter written by George Washington down there, dated 1794.
You must have made a big improvement in the museum.
The American stuff is all there.
Yes, but you obviously added a great deal to the museum. This is Ann Damon for the Newport Historical Society. This is the end of my first interview with Elton Manuel on February 3rd, 1984. Historical Society. Today, Friday, February 3rd, 1984, I'm interviewing Mr. Elton Manuel of 32 Bayside Avenue, Newport, for the Historical Society's All History Project, the neighborhood of Newport. Mr. Manuel lives in the neighborhood known as The Point. Mr. Manuel, where were you born?
19 Walnut Street.
Had your parents lived there for some time?
Oh, yes. Both mother and dad died there. Oh, no, Dad didn't. Dad died in a nursing home.
Tell me a bit about your parents. What was your father's name?
Edwin S. Manuel, and he and his brother had an express business in Newport. And they had, well, I can remember 3 different places they had. But the biggest one that I remember well, of course, was out there where out on the end of 3rd Street.
Mm-hmm.
But the one that they built is down at the foot of Cherry Street. And they're talking about turning that into a condominium. I don't know how it's going to go or not.
How do you feel about that?
It don't make no difference to me, whether it is or not. Don't mean anything to me at all anymore.
Had your father's family been in Newport for some time?
Yeah, my great-grandfather came from America and somewhere around the 1817s, we believe. We don't know just exactly. But he bought the house on 3rd Street that he had in 1832. I have the papers that show that.
Oh.
And he married an English woman named Simmons. And through her we can trace our ancestry back into the time of the Pilgrims. Simmonses and Sussex and Gibbses.
Very interesting. How about your mother? What was her name?
Mother was born in Ireland. Mother was born around Killarney somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
I don't exactly know where, but she used to talk about it sometimes, but not as much as I'd like to hear her talk about it.
What was her name?
Nora, and she swore that her last name, White, and she used to say that W-H-I-T-E was a color and W-H-Y-T-E was a name. And I know she had parents in Ireland, a brother that had, I've seen letters, I haven't seen it, but my father has, he told me about it. Seen letters from him that way, spelled Robert White, W-H-Y-T-E. So that White, I believe, I don't know whether it was real truth or not, is a Scottish name. And probably the Scottish went into Ireland at some time or other and apparently stayed there. But Mother came to Newport, I don't know just what year she came into America. She worked for the Arnold family down on the corner of Washington and Walnut Street. And she took care of their son. Oni, his name was. And his sister, I can't think of her name now, I don't know. She married an Italian count. And Mrs. Arnold used to come to the house and see us every once in a while. The years gone by, of course. That's when we were living at 19 Walnut Street.
Were the Arnolds year-round residents, or
Sorry?
were they year-round?
No, they're only summer residents. They had a home in Providence.
Okay.
Big house. I've been in that house too, in Providence, but I couldn't say where it was. I have no idea. All I know is Providence.
Did you have brothers and sisters?
Huh?
Did you have brothers and sisters?
No, I'm only one.
You're the only child.
Yeah, I'm all alone by my little lonesome.
Oh. Now, you told me about your father's occupation. Did he have any hobbies?
Dad?
Yeah.
Yeah, raising dahlias.
Oh.
He had two big fields that I can remember. One was on the back of a house down there on Walnut Street, and the other one was on that lot that's on the south side of Van Avenue as you come over the bridge. And I noticed there's a sign on it now for sale. A man named McClellan took over that lot after Dad, and he had trees and shrubs and stuff like that planted, and they went wild, and there's still some of it there down near the railroad tracks that was part of that Mr. McClellan's industry. I guess it's all of them industry because he's trailer of that stuff.
Was there more empty land around here at that time? Free lots?
No, not that I can think of. Of course, the Frey's Field is where Captain Place is now. Well, that was all a field at one time, and they used to grow vegetables in there. And they had a store right across the street on the corner of Chestnut, on the north corner, and they had their own vegetables, and they had other things in there, kind of a store like. I don't know how long it was in existence. I don't know.
How about your mother? Did she have time to do anything, any hobbies?
No. Mother was a housekeeper, and that was it.
Mm-hmm. How about you as a family for recreation? Did you do anything together?
Well, just go traveling once in a while. Not until the automobiles come into prominence.
Mm-hmm.
I don't remember much about horse traffic, because all the horses we had were all like big, heavy express horses, not one suitable for carriages or something like that. My Uncle Will had an auction room at one time on Thames Street, and we had a store at one time, and I worked in the store for quite some time before I was married, and we had a store first on the corner of Marlborough and West Broadway. Then they moved down to 299 Thames Street, that's nearly facing Franklin Street. Then we moved from there up to 50 Thames Street, which is on the corner of North Baptist and Thames. And that house that was on it has been torn down now, and it's an empty lot connected onto that old house that's there on that corner.
Mm-hmm.
I guess originally there were two houses on that lot, because I have pictures of it downstairs showing the other house, and of course the house that was on it originally, we had it, was a different house altogether. That's the trouble with Newport, so many houses have been torn down.
Or moved?
Either that or moved, as you say, moved, yes. They moved them like they were playing dominoes with them, or checkers. A woman named, think of her name. She moved houses all over Point, and she owned a house down on the corner of Second and Washington and Willow Street. No, I'm wrong. Washington and Elm Street on the south corner. Then she bought the lot up the street further and had a house built on it and added another house that was to the south of her own house to it and made it two sections to the house, and that's still standing there. Then she took a house that was on the corner of Poplar and Washington and moved down on Elm Street, and she had previously bought the whole south side of Elm Street. And well, she didn't build all the houses there, but she moved one house there. She moved another house on Washington Street, turned it around and pushed it back in the lot, the Minden house.
About when was this?
Oh, I guess in the 1880s, somewhere through there, when she was here. Her husband was a New York philanthropist. I think he had died. He left her, got a lot of money. He said she played around with it like it was nothing at all. But she moved houses on Washington Street area and Elm Street like she was playing checkers with him. I've always said that. I don't know how true that sounds.
Well, it's a wonderful story. You mentioned taking trips with your family. Where would you go?
Oh, well, we went up to see our cousins in Providence. Once in a while we'd take a ride down to Cape. That's about it. We weren't great travelers. I did more traveling myself after I was married with a friend of mine. After I got permission to use Dad's car, we used to go up to New Hampshire and Vermont. And sometimes we went into Maine. But peculiarly, we never went into Connecticut. We never understood why. We always somehow or other skipped around Connecticut.
Did you go to church regularly with the family?
Do I?
Did you go to church right as you were growing up?
I was brought up as a Baptist in a church down on Clark Street there, with a Baptist church in those days. And from there, when I married the wife, she was in St. Paul's Methodist Church. This was 1928, and I joined that church at that time. But I've been in numbers of churches in Newport, except the Jewish synagogue, singing. Both solo work with the choral group, the Swanhurst choral group. And
when did you start singing?
That's a question I can't answer. I was knee-high to a grasshopper.
Did your parents sing too?
Oh, we all used to go over to my aunt's house. My cousin Marion used to play piano, and she had a friend of hers who used to play piano also, and he was a crackerjack pianist. And we used to sit there by, well, the whole evening practically, and sing all the popular songs of the old days. And I can't remember when I started singing, but I know I was in the St. John's Choir down there on Washington Street quite early. I have a picture of myself in a choir robe. I can't tell you what, because it isn't dated, unfortunately. That's the worst of people. They don't take their pictures and they don't put names on the back of them. You don't know who they are.
We should all do that.
We had a birthday party in St. Paul last Sunday, and we had it all in one. We had a dinner, a potluck dinner, and for entertainment they had 38 pictures of various different people that were present. Of course, some of them were only baby pictures, then some of them grown up as they kept advancing. And there were 38 pictures there, and the girl sitting next to me recognized 17 of the 38. And we don't know yet if anybody did get the whole 38.
How did you do?
I didn't go at it at all because I didn't know anybody there. Well, I knew a few people as to see them there, but to see them in a baby picture, I wouldn't know who they were. I have no idea. My picture was up on the wall, and the girl that was next to me, as I say, the one that got 17, she says, she says, your violin gave you away. I had a violin in my hand. I used to play violin. And she says, the violin gave you away. That's all I knew about it.
So
But I didn't try to.
Music has played an important part in your life, then.
More or less, yeah.
In your family, how often would your family get together?
Sunday nights, any holiday that was on, we go over the house. They always lived on the point as far as I can remember.
And what other family did you have?
What do you mean by that?
Besides your parents?
Oh, I had aunts and uncles. And I had two uncles and two aunts. And they always lived together. And brothers and sisters they were. And they lived all over the point, and this is what spot with it. Of course, after some of them got off the point, they missed it, and wanted to come back to the point. And all of them did. That's the funny part of it. They did. Aunt Alice and Aunt Annie lived on Poplar Street one time. That's about as far as away as they got from the point, which isn't too far.
Where did you go to school?
Oh, I went to Calendar School, the first school I went to. That's down there on Willow Street. And they're turning that into a condo right now. Or trying to. So I think they've got it all turned, but I don't think people have occupied it very much. I go by it at night now and I see lights in 2 seconds. Then I went from there down to Potter School, which is on Elm Street. And from there I went to high school. And I only spent 3/4 of a year in high school. I couldn't take it.
Really? Why was that?
Well, I was a dummy. I was sick in arithmetic and I was sick in language. And I just figured that it would be good enough to quit and let it go at that. I used to love freehand drawing, and I would get along with that fine. Spelling I had no trouble with at all. And then while I was in school I started to study history a bit, but not American history. At that time I was more or less interested in English history. And since that time, of course, I switched into American history.
Of course.
I had a very good friend named Dr. Sherman and Mrs. Sherman. She became historian of the Newport Historical Society in the years gone by. And from her, I got a big grounding of Newport history. And it was through her that my book, Mansions and Mansions of Bygone Days, was put together, because she told me that she would give me all the help she could in writing it and putting it down, which she did. I used to go up and see her every night, every Sunday night, and I'd spend the night with her. She used to go out for supper. She's doing all this on her own.
Mm-hmm.
She would take me out to supper, and we'd have supper, then we'd go back to her house, or we'd either read or she would talk about different things in Newport that she knew. And her husband was a architect, historian of Newport. He was very good. They've both been dead for quite some time now, but I remember her very, very well. I'm trying to get together a new addition to my Merchants and Mansions to add to it what I have learned since 1939 when it came out. And I'm having trouble. History is, sometimes you have times in which you can't trace things that you want to trace.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, when the British left Newport, after the occupation and after the Revolutionary, or during the Revolutionary War, they took the town records with them.
Mm-hmm.
And that was put on board of a ship, of course, down in Hellgate, in New York. The ship sank.
Mm-hmm.
And when the trunk that had the records in it was brought up, they put it in storage, not drying them off at all, just threw them in storage. Well, after they did get them back and going through them, they find, and you can find that up the Historical Society, that some of the records are absolutely useless.
Mm-hmm.
So our very, very early records are not what you call good.
Mm-hmm.
You have to go guessing. And go guessing is not history. And I said, I don't believe it's history. Some people do, but I don't.
Could you describe the point as it was when you were growing up, this young man?
Well, it hasn't changed an awful lot.
When you lived with your parents?
The phrase field, of course, was open field. And there was a field on 3rd Street that was also belonging to DeFray's. They used to plant vegetables in there. And, of course, the house that we lived in, my mother and father, myself, lived in on Walnut Street, back into DeFray's field. In other words, backyard was that. And when we got married, we moved over the bridge, and the back lot was a cemetery.
Oh.
So we haven't been off of Walnut Street too long. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
not awfully long. It was only after Dad died that we built foolishly sold it. We built a house out on Balsam Avenue in Middletown.
Mm-hmm.
We only lived out there about 6 or 7 years before he passed on. He left me this house and went across the street, which is now standing on the corner of 2nd and Pine Cherry Street. He built, my father and his brother built 5 houses in this area.
On Bayside
That
Avenue.
brick one there, and this one, the one next door, the one across the street from it on the corner, and that one that would been in the center of the bridge entrance if they hadn't moved it, of course.
Mm-hmm.
And and the Worcester Higgin was across the street over here too. That was on the, that's another thing I remember very well, the building of the Naval Hospital. And when they moved the Worcester Higgin, which was the house that stood on that field where the hospital is now, it was across the street over here.
Oh.
And that was a rich man's house. A man named Mason built it. Of course, that's been torn down. Had to be torn down. They took the bridge in.
Yeah.
Bridge was there.
When did they build the Naval Hospital?
What?
When was the Naval Hospital built?
Around 1912, I think. Somewhere through that period.
What was the neighborhood? What were your neighbors like when you were growing up? Did you know them? Were you all very friendly? Was it
Boy only knew the people on the street.
Uh-huh.
Well, it was great for looking around the town to see who was there.
So was there any kind of a strong neighborhood feeling?
No. Mrs. Horgan's grocery store was down the foot of Walnut Street. Gilson finally bought it. And up on the other corner was Heine Katzman. Down below us on Poplar Street on the southeast corner of Poplar Street was, well, the First National Store finally took it over, but it was, there we go again, forget the name. That's a bad thing for me. It doesn't help at all. It was a store before the First National took it over, but I can't tell you who had it. I go by it every day, and the minute I see it, of course, I say it. Right the second, I can't think of it.
Was there any kind of a sameness about the neighborhood? Was some people in the same kinds of occupations, or similar backgrounds, or would you say, or would it, they were all different?
Well, first time I remember Dad's occupation, he was driving the bread truck, bakery truck, I should say, not bread truck. He worked for Franklin's Bakery, which then was on the corner of Spring Street and Mary, where Ward is now, the Ward printing office is now.
Mm-hmm.
And he worked for them. Then he worked for a man named Wilcox. He worked for Percy Bailey's Market at one time. That is before they started to go into the express business.
Mm-hmm.
But he was they were in that business around 34, 35 years, I guess, between the two brothers and a son of the brothers. He finally went out of existence. He went into bankruptcy.
Did you work in the express business too?
Huh?
Did you work in the express business too?
No.
No.
I had nothing to do with it at all.
Where did you meet your wife? She's from...
She used to work in a store on Broadway, and we had that, as I say, we had that shop across the street almost across the street there, on the corner of West Broadway and Marlboro. And she worked in the store, typewriting store, belonged to a man named Ennis. And I don't know how I got going in there, but I used to. And that's where I met her. And then she worked for Jersey, who was an oil burner man at one time. And he had an office down on the corner of Charles and Marlboro Street. And she worked for him for, I don't know if at the time we were married or not, but close to that, I would think. Yeah.
Where did she grow up? Where did she live?
She lived out on Thurston Avenue. Don't ask me the number, I don't remember.
Mm-hmm.
My son lives out on Thurston Avenue now.
Oh.
But he lives, I know where his number is. His number is 18. She was 32, I think, I'm not sure.
And you were married in 1929?
28.
1928. And where did you live when you were married?
Well, after we were married,
Yeah.
we lived on number 7 Walnut Street.
Right.
Just over the bridge.
Just over the bridge.
Yeah. You see, they cut that bridge out right after we got out of the house. They cut the bridge out completely. That bridge used to be across the trolley car to the train station. And I forgot what year they changed that all over, but they fixed up Long Lane, as we used to call it. stood on the Farwell, not Farwell, yeah, Farwell Street. Farwell Street it was called. And then they tore the stone cutting shed down on the corner, and 2 houses beyond it. On the north side of the street, 3 houses beyond it. Yeah, 3 houses beyond it. And I don't know if they saw houses down on the other side of the street or not. I haven't seen it such a long while, I don't know. No, they didn't tear any houses down on the other side of the street. Yes, they did, on the other side. On this side of the bridge they didn't.
And this was a bridge for trolleys?
Because our 19 Walnut Street still standing there. Burke's house is still there. Burke's house was right on the bridge. That was on the north side of the street. Northwest side.
And this was a bridge that went over trolley tracks?
Well, trolleys used to go over the bridge, yeah.
Going over the bridge?
Oh, sure. Connected into 3rd Street and went out straight out 3rd Street into the train station. Sure.
And what was the bridge over? What did the bridge cross over?
Railroad track.
The railroad track.
Yeah. I don't know just when they put that bridge in there, but it's around the 1860 something, 68, somewhere through that period. That house now that stands on the corner of Willow and 2nd Street, they just restored over there.
Oh.
That stood on Gould Street originally. And it was a mess on Gould Street. It was falling apart. And some people bought it, and they bought the lot on the corner of Willow and 2nd, and moved the house that was on it there out onto Bayside Avenue somewhere. I don't know just where. And then they built their house, this Gould Street house, on the corner of that lot. It's standing there now. And Dad used to say that he had heard, but he never would say who told him. He would always tell these stories, but he never would say where the source came from. It was on property these people thought was where the railroad tracks were. In other words, the tracks were just dirt when they. But the railroad tracks were called 4th Street, and I think they still are, because the house on the railroad tracks, on the south side of the railroad track, and Poplar Street has a sign on it calling it 4th Street. Was what they used to call the cove.
Oh, the biggest what?
Used to call it the cove.
Oh.
It extended from Long Wharf. The water extended from Long Wharf up to Bridge Street.
This is Ann Damon for the Newport Historical Society. Today, Monday, February 13th, 1984, I'm having the second of 2 interviews with Mr. Elton Manuel of 32 Bayside Avenue, Newport, for the Historic Society's Oral History Project, Neighborhoods of Newport. Now, it should be good. Mr. Manuel, today let's talk about some events in Newport's history and how they affected you. Let's start with the hurricane of 1938.
Well, the hurricane of Newport was quite an affair. It certainly brought many ships to ruin. Probably the biggest one that was adrift, crashed into the seawall at the Naval Training Station. I'll get it in a minute. Naval Torpedo Station, and broke down the house, the lighthouse, the caretaker's house of the light that was on the north end of the island. Today the light is still standing. and is known as the Green Light and is used by the Point Association for their magazines. I was working at the time at 50 Thames Street, that's on the corner of North Baptist Street, and water was coming up both Bridge Street and Thames Street, and I heard that the Baptist minister of Mount Olivet, which was just a short distance down the street, put on his baptismal uniform and was down on Washington Square pulling people out of the water. There was several different boats, small skiffs more or less, tied up in front of the Opera House at that time, and water came up all through the point, because the water, of course, was all along the whole shoreline, and water came up through the point as far up as 2nd Street. One man who was walking home from his work on Thames Street, a little scared of the water, it was so deep, he got up as far as Elm Street, and walking through Elm Street, he lived down towards the water. He stumbled over a flight of stairs that was covered with the water, and he had his shoes off, and he lost his pair of shoes, and of course he got soaking wet. I lived at Walnut Street at that time, and the Walnut Street Bridge, the railroad track, made a beautiful causeway for the water, and looking out the window I saw the water running up the track, and lumber from the J.T. O'Connell place on Long Wharf was floating very merrily up the railroad track, and they say that it got out as far or a little bit beyond Van Zandt Avenue before the water receded. At that night, the Civil Defense Organization called out their reserves, and I was one of them at the time, and we patrolled the streets of Newport to keep people from busting into houses and so forth. That was one of the biggest projects that I can remember. Manuel Brothers Warehouse, which was out the far end of 3rd Street, didn't have much damage, but the building that they hired down on Narragansett Avenue was completely underwater, and the water rushed in from one side of the street and went out through to the other side and completely ruined all the furniture that was in it. Whatever became of some of the furniture, nobody seems to know. It was one of those cases that people had to suffer. That was about it. I can't think of any other advantage of the hurricane. Wasn't any advantage at all, because it broke up many small boats and landed them up on Long Wharf and the other wharf that was handy. It crashed them up against it. The water was pretty high.
Where were you when the hurricane hit? Were you at work at...
I was working for my father's furniture store, second-hand furniture store on the corner of North Baptist and Thames Street.
What was your reaction? Were you afraid or...
Afraid? No, I wasn't exactly afraid. I didn't walk very slowly getting home, but I wasn't scared.
You wanted to get home as fast as possible.
The water hadn't got up quite that far yet, so I was safe enough as far as water was concerned. But when it was down on Lower Thames Street, I guess it was pretty high. Because, as I say, the water took skiffs and smashed them up against the Opera House, which was there. So the water, and of course there is a marking on the brick market there to tight to the water that came up. If anybody cares to read it, they can see how high the water was at that time.
How about your house? Was there any damage to that?
No. No damage to that. But the water going up the railroad track, I could see it very plainly out the window and see it, all the lumber from J.T. O'Connell's warehouse, which a lumber shed, which is down on Long Walk, was floating right up the stream. And it was surprising to see how it got out there. It went out there pretty far. They say it was a little bit beyond Van Zandt Avenue before it let up.
Did you know anybody who was hurt in the hurricane or loss of life?
Oh,
Personally?
People and some kids in a bus in Jamestown, I believe. I don't say they were seriously hurt. They were more scared, I think, than hurt. They may have had some small little thing that bothered them. But I don't know of anybody in Newport that was seriously hurt. More scared than anything else, I think.
I'm sure, yeah.
Because when it came up very rapid.
Yeah. How long before things got back to normal?
A couple of days. Of course, it took a long while to pick up all that lumber, all that stuff that was knocking around,
sure,
and of course, pulling the boats off the docks and wharves and stuff like that. It took time.
You mentioned patrolling the houses. Was looting a problem?
Sorry?
Was looting a problem after the hurricane here in downtown?
No.
No?
They got that cleaned up pretty well.
They didn't have trouble with people trying to lift merchandise out of stores?
I don't think so. We had a pretty good force of civilian defense men and things like that around. I think that stopped it pretty much. And we were all wearing steel helmets, so that if anything fell down on top of us, it wouldn't hurt us too seriously.
Yeah. How was Newport rebuilt? Who was responsible for building it?
You mean the hurricane?
Yeah, after the hurricane.
Oh, I suppose every contractor who was around the area had a crack at it. I really don't know.
And was
the thing I was
the city or the state? Probably the state may have moved in too.
Well, I imagine the state helped a lot too. I don't know how much damage the state had up in Providence and through that area. I imagine there was quite a bit of damage throughout the South County in that way from the hurricane.
How about the point? Was there any particular damage on the point?
Nothing serious. There may have been shingles torn off a roof or something like that. Yeah. But outside of that, there wasn't anything too serious. That I know of. I'm a little bit dull on that. I don't really know.
Oh, I must have been really quite an experience.
Well, it was. To read in the paper afterwards, the various different people that had problems and troubles. I have a book downstairs. I haven't seen it in years. That told about the troubles they had up in Providence. It's put out by the Providence Journal, and it's quite a book. It shows all the pictures and stuff of that part of the world, that part of the country. But Washington Street and that area, the lower end of Washington Street, and that area, I guess, suffered pretty much because the boats were banging up against the walls and things like that. That's where the problem came in. Big steamboats, you wouldn't think they would be put raised up in the air. So
imagine
they were really, really up in the air. Yeah. Yeah, there was 4 or 5 of those boats, big steamboats that were passenger boats that used to run up and down from Providence to Newport, you know.
Yeah.
They were up on wharves.
Boy. Were they repaired and put back into service after that?
Oh, some were repaired. The Jamestown ferries were put up on, they landed up on Gould Island, and they were repaired afterwards. They were brought down again. But the worst, as I say, one of the biggest boats that I know of that was adrift and banged into the caretaker's house on Goat Island out there. That's the north end of the island.
Yeah.
Knocked that house down completely.
Goodness.
But they saved the lighthouse. The lighthouse wasn't touched. And as I say, it's still standing there.
Yeah.
As the green lights. Paper has.
Well, you've lived most of all your life, really, on the Point, and I've seen some changes here. Moving on to another subject.
Well, the only one street I ever knew on the Point
Was
where I lived was on Walnut Street.
right, right.
And of course, the training station trolley car used to come over that bridge and go up 3rd Street to the station.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, I remember all the traffic that was on that.
Yeah.
And it was quite a rattling once in a while to hear the trolley cars go by. Because there were lots of sailors on those days over the station. And they were always getting in late, you know,
Mm-hmm.
grabbing a trolley car to get
Lots of noise.
back home.
Yeah.
Of course, that bridge is gone.
Now, when was that bridge torn down?
The bridge was torn down when they started to reconstruct the highway for the new Jamestown-Newport Bridge.
I see.
They widened out in some ways Farewell Street, which we used to know as Long Lane.
Mm-hmm.
And houses were torn down. The 3 houses beyond us on Washington Street to the east was torn down, which included a stonecutter shed that was on the corner of Long Lane and Farewell Street. And the bridge was taken down. I never understood why. The trolley car, of course, they went out of existence there. And I suppose that's the reason why they took the bridge down. But I still couldn't see the reason why they didn't leave the bridge up there for automobiles to go over.
Yeah.
But they took it down completely and made it well, it was a one-way street for a while, and then they made another curve off of it and came up into Katzman Place. So now you can go up Walnut Street as far as the bridge,
Mm-hmm.
but you have to turn off and go out Katzman Place, which leads you back to 3rd Street again.
Mm-hmm. Well, did that sort of isolate you over there?
Sorry?
When the bridge was torn down, were you
Yeah,
sort of
after the
isolated?
bridge was torn down, they made that highway in there. The house that stands on the north side of Walnut Street, on the nearest to the bridge, family of Burkes lived in it. I haven't any idea who built it, but at one time that house was facing the railroad tracks, which was known in those days as 4th Street, before the railroad tracks came in. And that house there of Burke's faced, in other words, their front door was on 4th Street, not Walnut Street as it is today. The house is still standing there. My father's house was 19 Walnut. We lived on the 2nd floor and the 1st floor. We lived on both. They moved downstairs after a while.
Well, that house is still standing.
Sorry?
That house is still standing.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. Yes, all the houses on the west side of the bridges, all standing. All of them. It was only those on the east side of the bridge, on the north side of the bridge, was torn down.
They were torn down. They weren't moved anywhere.
No.
Just,
No, they were torn down.
and that was at the same time they tore the bridge down.
Yeah. Well, soon after, I don't
Yeah.
know how.
Yeah.
Well, the same time.
So were you living there then? Had you already moved to Middletown?
No, I was living there. We had to get out.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I wasn't living there then. I'm wrong on that. My son was living there.
Uh-huh.
And when he got out, he had rented a house on Madison Court which is off of Walnut Street to the south. And then when we moved to Balsam Avenue, he took over number 7 Walnut and lived there for quite some time before when they were going to tear that house down, he bought a house out on Thurston Avenue, and he's still out there. That was quite a shift for him too, you see.
Yes, yes.
But he's got a beautiful house out there on Thurston Avenue. Very nice house.
So how did they go about doing that? Did they obviously paid you for the house?
Yes, they paid so much money for the house. I forgot now what it was. I don't know. Same as they did on this bridge when they put this bridge in. That house that was across the street that would have been right in the middle of the roadway.
Yeah.
At the time, they gave us so much money, and then the state sold it to another man, and he moved it and had it moved up, and it sits now on the corner of Cherry and 2nd Street.
Oh.
That's the only one there with a brick end to it, and that's real brick. It's not imitation brick. It's the real McCoy. They had a job moving it down.
Boy. Was that an older house, or was that one of the ones your father had built?
That's one of the ones my father had. My father and my uncle had built. They built this house that we're in here, and the one next to it, and the one on the corner, and the brick house over there. They bought these lots up here at one time. And the house next door to us was moved here from the rear of St. John's Church, which is down on Willow Street. It was the stable for the Colville house.
Oh.
And after the stable, of course, was given up altogether, Mrs. Colville had the house moved up here. And this is it standing now. It's made into tenements. That's another one of the shifts that they made. But there was a woman named Kendall that played checkers with houses on the point. She moved them all over the place.
Oh, was she the one you were telling me about last time?
Yes, I found out her name. I didn't know it at the time. Her name, she was a widow of Isaac Kendall, and I guess they had lots of money the way its story seems to run. She built the house that's on the south corner of Elm and Washington on the east side. And then she purchased the whole land on Elm Street on the south side down as far as a house on the corner of Elm and 2nd Street. And then she kind of started to move houses all over the place. And she moved houses here and she moved houses there. She moved quite a few number of houses. And some of them we know where they came from, and some of them we don't know where they came from because history just didn't record them. I suppose if anybody wanted to find out, they could, but it would be a little bit of a problem. Wouldn't be too much of a one, I suppose, but nobody was that interested, I don't think. But you see, Washington Street and that area was a very popular street in those days. I have just found out that the Roeblings, he designed the Brooklyn Bridge, had summered in the Stella Maris for several seasons at different times. And it's an interesting story now. I'm trying to find out just when the Stella Maris was built, and we believe it was built around the 1850s. But he sold the house. The man that built the Stella Maris was named Myers, and he sold the house. He sold the land to the north of him, and there was a house built on that land, which is still standing there, which was belonging to the Jenks property. Well, I can remember the Stella Maris property now being in the hands of a man named Cunningham, and he owned the property across the street and had a pier out into the water, and he had a sailboat, and he used to tie up there, you see.
Mm-hmm.
I can remember that very well. And the lot that's across the street, directly across the street, was a tennis court at one time. I can't tell you the histories of it because I don't know. I know it was my Uncle Will that made it into a tennis court, but whether it's a grass court or what kind, I don't know. And he never did say, and I've never asked him. I suppose I should have, but I wasn't interested in history at that time.
Yeah.
It was only in the later years that I found myself wound up in history, unfortunately. I only wished I had asked questions when Dad was around, because he could have told me quite a few things about them.
Oh, I'm sure he could.
And the area, because he knew it pretty well and he lived on it all his life.
Mm-hmm.
The Manuels were brought up on the point. My great-grandfather bought the house on 17th 3rd Street in 1832, and he married a woman named Simmons. And through her we can trace back to the Pilgrims. Her family was all related to the Southicks and Gibbses and the Simmons. And I haven't tried to trace it much. I'm not bothered with it. I'm perfectly satisfied the way it's gone, let it alone. I would like to know about my grandfather's people, but they're across the ocean and I won't bother with them either.
Well, there's been a bit of moving, restoration and moving of houses on the point lately in the last 15 years.
Well, they haven't been much moving lately. I can't remember any houses being moved on the point.
Did they take some down, or some of the houses that were really in bad shape? Did they move some of those or tear them down? And
well, I don't know if any of those moved. They've been torn down more than moved that I can recall.
What about Operation Clapboard? Are you familiar with that and how that operates?
Oh, they've fixed up some houses. There's a few houses. There's one house I'd like to have restored, but I don't know if it ever will be.
Which one is that?
That's the one that's on the corner of Marsh and Washington Street on the northeast corner. It was the old schoolhouse.
Oh.
It was given to the trustees of Long Wharf by a man named Simeon Potter. He was a Swansea man, I believe. He gave him that land and the house to form a schoolhouse, the first public schoolhouse. But it's still a tenement house. I suppose it's about the best way to use it, maybe. I feel the same way about the church that's to the north of the Armory Museum on Clark Street.
Yes.
Ezra Stiles' church. That shouldn't be turned into a condominium by any manner of means. Not in my mind.
Do you think it will be?
I don't know. It seems to be falling down on that. But I'm afraid somebody's going to throw a match at it some of these days,
dear.
and that's going to be it.
I know.
That's what I'm more afraid of.
Yeah.
Clark Street is an old street. And I wrote up a history of Clark Street one time, named all the houses on it, who lived in them. And I got some recognition for it from Mrs. Downing, who wrote the Architectural Heritage of Rhode Island. And I am working now on that rewriting of Merchants and Mansions, but I'm having this trouble with this Archibald Campbell, who has me really tied up. And I'm waiting to hear from Charleston, South Carolina on it. Because it couldn't be two mad Archies. That's not possible.
No. There's another outfit that's been active here on the point and on the hill, the Newport Restoration Foundation. Are you
Well,
familiar
they
with their
restored
work?
quite a few houses on the point. I don't know how much backing they gave to it, but the Perry House, Matthew Calabrase's Perry House, has been restored.
Where is that?
It's on the corner of Washington, 2nd and Walnut Street, on the northeast corner. It was a grocery store, as I first knew it. That is, part of it was a grocery store. The upstairs, of course, was a tenement. But Matthew Calabrese Perry was born in that house. And he was, of course, the one that opened the ports of Japan. Other houses. Well, there's a house on...
Seem to be quite a few on Washington Street, across from the Hunter House that the NRF has been involved
They've
with.
restored quite a few houses, but I couldn't say how many. I really don't know.
Do you think that they did a good job? It's been good for the point.
Well, they're all good for the point. The green light has helped a lot in things that's been done on the point.
How does the green light operate? I mean, how does it help? By writing and educating people?
Well, yes. Yeah, they have a group of people that's interested, you know.
Yeah.
And they have these meetings every once in a while. And they do pretty good. Now I understand they're going to restore or renovate the St. John's Rectory, which is on Poplar Street.
Oh.
I mean the parish house, parsonage house, not the rectory, The rectory is in good shape. There's nothing wrong with that. That's an old house too. That house originally stood on the sidewalk, and it was pushed back on the lot.
Oh.
And of course, they had quite an argument when that front door was put on it, because that front door was really the back door of the Hunter House.
Oh, really?
I got pictures of it downstairs to prove
For
it.
goodness sakes.
How
did it get to the rectory?
Well, a woman that was in the Mrs. Esther Morton Smith, who lived in the Robinson houses up the street, when they tore off a porch off of that Hunter House, but before they tore off the porch, they moved that back door that was facing the water and laid it away somewhere, and she saw it. And she asked them what they were going to do with it, and they said they didn't know. If she wanted it, she could have it. So she took it, and she put it in as the back door of the rectory of the St. John's Church. Later on, they moved it. I don't know who moved it, whether the trustees or St. John's moved it or not, but it became the front door. And they were looking for the front door for the Hunter House. And it was just a plain, ordinary doorway. And a man named John Perkins Brown, who was a historian and an architect, he saw a doorway out of the city. And as soon as he saw it, he thought it was the lost front door of the Hunter House.
From Providence? Or from city of Newport?
Say?
He saw a door in the city here in Newport?
I don't know where it was he saw this door. It was somewhere out of state, in New England. He brought the door, hit the Newport, and they put it to vote to see whether everybody thought it was the lost door, and they voted no. So the door was returned to the original owner, and I believe they said it was too too ornate a door for what it was, because it had different colored paints on it that was different than what the Hunter House had been painted. So then they got permission to make a copy of the original back door and use it as the front door, which is there now.
So that's a reproduction then, today on the Hunter House.
Yeah. Speaking of reproductions, that brings to mind a story that I don't know whether I should tell or not. The artillery company found over in the South County 2 cannon, and they got a hold of the governor, asked him if there was any possible chance that they could get them. Well, he wasn't any too sure about these. And finally, he said that the organization that owned the 2 cannons was so small that he didn't think there'd be any great amount of loss in getting them, providing we could give them a reproduction. It's the only way we knew how to get a reproduction, make them out of wood. So they did.
Out of wood.
And painted them black. Brought them over there, and worked all day long in moving those iron cannons, and not a darn word was said to them, what you're doing or what's going on. Nothing at all.
Now, where was this? Where
Over
they
in
come?
South County somewhere.
South County.
And we have the 2 bronze cannons down the armory now. Well, we had trouble with them when we first got them because they were painted black, and of course they're bronze. And we had to get the black paint off, and it didn't come off easy. Well, we kept using different methods of getting it off. It finally has come off a little bit better than they were. But the 2 that had been in the armory all the time, strapped up to the newel post of the stairway down in the back, were in good condition when they put them on trails for firing. So today the armory has 4 bronze cannon, and we have found out that they were made in the Revere Foundry in 1799.
Oh, isn't that wonderful?
And we got that information from the Massachusetts Historical Society. They had all the records of the foundry up there.
That's wonderful.
So
Treasures.
that picture, that book that's downstairs there now, that Mrs. Boss book, she says that they have the oldest cannons usable today. And now the artillery company is talking about taking out a Civil War cannon, which is a bigger one, much bigger one, and using that for firing. And that's bronze too. And that's a big cannon. I hope they won't take it out. But I don't think I can stop them. I have no control. The funny story goes with them too. They were given, or they came from somewhere, we don't know where, we don't know how they came. There were 2 of them. And one of them was up in the cemetery, and it fell apart, all but the wheels. And the city of Newport gave us the cannon, just a barrel. And on looking at it, we discovered on the top of the trunnion, where it connects onto the trial, it was scratched in oval, like Newport Artillery 1741. So they were taken out of the artillery company at some time or other, and we have no record of them being removed. We don't know where they got out and how they got out.
Or why?
One of them is still up, or as far as we know, is still up in the cemetery, on the Grand Army's grave cemetery.
That's interesting.
That cemetery is an interesting place when you ramble through it the way I have. I've been all through that place I don't know how many times. And there's so many different beautiful stones up through there. Old ones.
Yeah.
The oldest one we have here is 1650. It's about 20 years older than any dated gravestone in Plymouth. Of course, that don't mean much because they buried them people in Plymouth without putting the stones up.
Yes, at first. Right.
Well, they first got there, so there is no way of telling that. But they didn't put gravestones up because they didn't want the Indians to know they were losing their inhabitants, you see. So it was in the 1670s or 80s, somewhere through there, it's first marking their gravestone to what was missing. See, Newport has all sorts of contacts with things of that type.
Oh, they really do.
It goes all through it.
Fascinating.
And that Campbell, he was the originator of a provincial regiment to be called the New York Volunteers. And Alexander Grant that was with him, he was the major in the outfit, and Campbell was only a captain. Grant's father was a very well-known merchant in London, England, and I think that's why Grant got the rank of major, because he had influence in the British colony, you say. And he was made a major instead of a captain. He finally did make colonel before he got through, because Campbell was killed. But I'm yet to find out who this Mad Archie is that's down in South Carolina.
Well, I'm sure you will.
That's the mean one.
Yeah. When organizations like the Newport Restoration Foundation came into the point and did over houses, did they must have displaced some people who were living there, weren't they? Did you know anybody who was?
Well, I don't know of anybody of that type. Of course, the biggest house they restored was the Hunter House. They own that, of course, today.
The Preservation Society, yeah.
Well, in the earlier days, going back quite a little, there was about 5 of us. Mrs. Sherman was one of them. And we had a group, we called it the Georgian Society. And we had permission, he had permission to use one of the rooms in the Pithead Tavern when it was on Charles Street as our meeting room. And finally we're given permission to use the Pithead Tavern any way we wanted to use it. In other words, if we wanted to restore it, we could have, but we didn't have the money. Where did we get the money from?
Just imagine.
And so finally it was given to the Preservation Society, and they moved it, or they didn't move it, but I don't know who did move it, over on Bridge Street now where it stands. But that building stood there on the east side of Charles Street, right behind the brick buildings on the corner. And there was about 6 of us in that group called the Georgian Society. And of course, when the Preservation Society came in, they turned it over. We turned it over to them. But we almost had, at the time, it was John Perkins Brown, and his work almost had the Hunter House. But we didn't succeed in getting it, but it was just close, you know. John Perkins Brown did the restoration of the bank that's on the corner of the square.
Oh, yes.
And,
Washington Square.
yeah. He was quite a good architect. He was a nut, but he was a good architect. Yeah, I remember, I knew him quite well. He owned at one time, he owned the Peter Simon House, which is on Bridge Street. He owned it. And he said he never seen anything as pretty as what it was, because the paneling on that is gorgeous.
Yes.
The paneling on that is beautiful.
What did the Georgian Society do?
Do what?
What did the Georgian Society do?
Well, they didn't do much of anything, just met. We tried to form an organization, but it fell down. Nobody seemed to want to bother with it. There was only 4 or 5 of us that was really interested. Mrs. Sherman, of course, and several others that were interested in old houses. But as far as having money was concerned, that was out.
Yeah.
But people like Doris Duke, when she took hold, is when the money began to show what you could do with.
Yeah.
She had an argument with John Perkins Brown, too.
Oh, did she? What about?
I don't know what it was about, but I know he got out of Newport at the time. He left Newport and went down to Bahamas or someplace. He didn't come back until the Tinnies came into Newport.
Oh.
And he was working with them down there. But I don't know what the argument was. But there was something that he had done that they didn't, that she didn't like.
They didn't like. What is kind of a person is? Does she take an active interest in the?
Who?
Doris Duke. Does she actively run the?
Well, she brought a lot of houses here. Speaking of that,
she does it mostly herself.
I know that I think of Doris Duke, I can think of 2 or 3 houses she brought to Newport. That one that's on the corner of Cousins Court, and that one that's on that New Hampshire and New Jersey house that's on Spring Street. That's almost up to Toro Street there.
Oh, yes.
And it seems to me there's 2 houses on Thames Street she brought to Newport. There's one that's on the corner of Bridge Street, and the other one's on the corner of Cousins Court. You know, that used to be called Scott's Folly.
Did it? Why?
Well, there's a man that owned the house that was on the southwest corner. He built the house, and the people thought it was a folly that he should build such a big house because he didn't have money to support it, apparently. And his name was Scott. And I have read somewhere where he was a great uncle of Sir Walter Scott. And he built that house, and they finally called that alleyway that runs down there Scott's Folly.
This is on Spring Street.
No, Thames Street.
Oh, Thames Street.
It's almost at the foot of North Baptist.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. Huh. You wonder how those things get kicked around that way, but they do. Of course, Cousins owned that house that he built on the corner afterwards. A man named Cousins owned it. He was deputy governor.
Which corner is this?
The same corner.
Oh.
The southwest corner of Scott's Folly, Cousins Court, in other words. He was deputy governor of the state, and at one time he had a whale ship, which was my grandfather was on board of it. My great grandfather was on board of it.
Oh.
And he brought the ship into the Newport, and my grandfather, and he gave my grandfather this job of a hat maker, and that's how he got his living. And Cousins built or rearranged the house so that they named the house, the alleyway, after him.
I see.
And the the yard of that went right down into the cove. There was no houses down there except, that is not on the south side. On the north side there may have been, but on the south side there wasn't, because his yard went right down into the cove. Of course, that was quite a cove of water when you come to think of it. It came up to Bridge Street. And I told you the other day, I knew a woman that used to go shopping, take a boat and go down across it under the bridge on Long Wharf, and go shopping on Thames Street.
Yeah.
And
you said schooners used to come in there.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, big schooners, sure. That's that whole wharf. There were 17 wharfs between Long Wharf and Bridge Street on that cove. And Claggett's, of course, had a big, that stone ender that's down on Bridge Street was a Claggett house, and 2 houses beyond it was William Claggett, who was the man that was interested in electricity. And there's 2 or 3 other Claggetts around, but I don't think they were just some part of the family. I don't know who they are. There's a Claggett house on the corner of Chestnut Street in 2nd. But who he is, I don't know. Those names got kicked around, the Townsends. There were
a lot of them, huh?
Oh, I think there's either 14 or 15 of them. And they all had children. And they all took the name, or used it for a middle name, somehow. And that's the way it goes. Now, see, the point was only a small parcel of land that only extended from Long Wharf up to about this end of the street here. And, well, I wouldn't say they went as far over as into Thames Street. I don't think it did. Probably the railroad track would be the end of it, to say. It wasn't very big.
No.
And Callender School was the first schoolhouse that was built, and following that was the Elm Street School, Potter School.
You went to both those schools, didn't you?
Yeah, it was the only 2. Well, I went to Mumford for a short while, but when I graduated from Mumford, that was the 7th grade. I went into high school. I only spent 3/4 of a year in high school.
That's what you told me. You didn't need to know anymore.
Sorry?
You didn't need to know anymore.
No, it wasn't that. I was too thick.
Hardly.
I'll admit it. I was terrible in English and mathematics. I still can't do them. Bothers me no end.
Well, you write very well.
I can write pretty good. I didn't have any trouble spelling. Language bothered me, though. I had to stop and think, and I still do. I have to write over 3 or 4 different times to see if I'm saying it the way I want to say it, you know. And this new book I'm writing now, it's going to be called Ghosts of an Old Town.
Oh.
I've changed the name from Merchants and Mansions. And on the cover of it is a picture of the entrance to the cave, not the cave, the bottom of the fort, North Patrick. I have a picture of that too. I wish I could have got my pictures upstairs. I had no place to put them. Otherwise, I would have had that case up there, believe me.
I would like to see them.
Cool, was very handy. I've got three drawers. Well, a regular filing cabinet, right? 3 of them are full of pictures.
Wonderful.
And I've got quite a number of the Historical Society bulletins downstairs. I look them over every once in a while to find something that I missed up on. I'm using a lot of that in that Ghost of an Old Town telling about Claggett, the electrician.
It's a one very good title.
Huh?
I like your title.
Yeah. I stole that from another book too. I got a book downstairs called The Ghost of London. This man wrote about all of the old things in London. So I saw it one day and I said, gee, why can't I steal the same thing and add an old town to it?
Yeah.
You see, Newport, in some ways, had the advantage of other seaports in the earlier days, in the very early days. I have seen letters, a man showed me one time, addressed to Newport, near New York. Now that was going back.
Yeah.
But you see, after the British came in here, they ruined everything. They ruined the commerce, the houses. They tore or burned down about 900 houses. And Lord knows what that covers, you know. You can't tell. They took the town records and left them in a boat rather, and the boat sunk up in the Hellgate, New York.
Goodness.
And instead of drying them off when they put them in storage, they didn't. So when they got back to the original owners, they were a mess. They were falling apart.
Yeah.
You couldn't read them.
What a shame.
So all the early things, you got to guess at,
Yeah.
more or less. So when these people say 1640, 1650, you take it a little bit.
Yeah. No way to actually document it, is there?
Well, you can't believe it hardly, you know. Now that book downstairs says the Connington House was built 1641. Well, it may have. I don't say that it wasn't. But I know it was torn down after much the regrets of the owner. Because if he had used his head, he would still leave it. Because that would be one of the great outstanding pieces of Newport.
Yes.
But he didn't. It's gone. And lots of the other old houses have been ruined the same way. Stores have been buried into them on the lower floors, the upper stairs. The paneling and all that stuff was pulled out and sold. I knew a man here in Newport at one time, Arthur Leslie Green. He made a business of buying all the panels, the wide floorboards, and all that stuff. He had been a teacher out at the Klein School, out in the Kleinfield. And he bought everything and sent them out to the Middle West. And so his sister out there sold them.
Did anybody try to stop him, or?
They didn't think anything about it.
People really weren't thinking in those terms, were they, in
they wasn't
those
thinking
days?
of preserving old houses. They just banged them down and let them go. Whatever they got out of the lumber and the stuff that was inside, it was to the credit of the guy that bought it. Lots of houses were torn down. The Brindley house, it was down on the corner of Brindley and Thames Street. The paneling in there, Mrs. Downing shows it. Most artists, most unique, beautiful.
Do you remember when it was torn down? Do you remember it being torn down?
Oh, it was torn down years ago. But the paneling is still in Newport.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, placed in another house.
You mentioned the other day about Battery Park.
Sorry?
You mentioned the other day about Battery Park on the plane.
Battery Park was called the North Battery. I don't know who christened it now, but it was used for a number of years before the artillery company went into it. They had permission to go in there in 1812, but it became 1813 or 14 before they got into it. And they stayed there only, I don't know how many months, it was only months. They also was in Fort Adams at one time to replace the soldiers that were there for other points of advantage more than the Newport one, you see. So Battery Park was given up by the government and was sold. And the lot next door to it, which was the tennis court that I was telling you about, that was sold by Garrison, I think it was. He bought both of them and gave them to the city of Newport.
Oh.
But it was called Fort Greene, naming after Nathaniel Greene, the famous Rhode Islander. It was named that before he bought it. I just don't remember now the date of the purchase, but it's around the 1790s. Yeah. That's another long drawn out story. There was considerable argument about it because a man named Fry was the commanding officer of the artillery company at that time, and in the 1812 presidential gift to the, I don't mean gift, but I mean saying they could occupy it, of the fort, they said that he would have complete charge of the fort. And after that, there were squawks on and on and on and on. It went for quite some time by the different officers of the other that were Army, that were in forts like on Fort George and other forts like around Castle Hill, I don't mean Castle Hill, Fort Adams, Fort Weatherall's over here that was on Goat Island. And eventually they did give it to Fry, and he was in charge completely of everything on the fort. And they were paid the same as the soldiers in the Army, and they were supplied by rations the same way. So that was a pretty good deal they had there. But it didn't last long. It only lasted a few months. There was another man here in Newport that was quite a historian, and too bad he passed out without writing up a history. His name was Stevens, John Austin Stevens. He founded the Order of Cincinnati. And he lived in Newport for a while. And he wrote up a history of the artillery company of Newport, especially. And it's still available in about 20-odd some volumes, handwritten. It should be typed, of course. But who they would get to type it, I don't know. Not me, I'm only a one-fingered Johnny with a typewriter. My daughter is a good typist, but she's in Maryland. She's typed a lot of the things for me that's in that amongst those files there. Well, I'm still getting items for the museum.
Good.
On the 9th, I had a package about that long and about that thin that came from the Netherlands, from an Army officer that used to live next door to us here when he was in the Naval War College. and he sent us all sorts of stuff, pictures of tanks and rocket launchers and all sorts of stuff. Great big long pictures, beautiful, all in color.
Wonderful.
Of going to the end.
Well, I wanted to ask you a couple of questions about the redevelopment in Newport, other sections of it. Your ideas. What do you think about what they did with the brick market in that area? Do you like that?
Oh, it was good. I think it was all right. I don't know that. No, as long as they don't ruin everything, it's perfectly all right. But I can't see all these condominiums on the Ocean Drive ruining the drive. They actually did ruin the drive. There's no.
I think so too.
That's where I think they're crazy.
Well, I think that I hope.
Now this extension of the Ann Street Pier is going to be another one. I'm afraid it's going to cause trouble.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well, I hope they.
Well, the Tourist Bureau there that owns the Armory now.
Yes.
You see, they want to get length so they can get boats come into side slip piers
Sure.
so they can talk to people. Well, you can't blame them for it.
No.
But what's the sense of ruining the whole waterfront just by letting hotels come up in there? That one that's down on Wellington Avenue. I can't see the sense of that either. I don't see why they need one down there, you know. Doesn't think it's needed.
No. But a lot of the redevelopment you think has been good for Newport.
It has, in a way, yes. But I think especially on the drive. I think that's where your trouble pops in. But what would they do with those estates that were there other than that? I don't know.
I know.
I suppose eventually somebody would come into that estate where that beautiful, beautiful place that belonged to Perrin people there. Or Perrins owned it afterwards.
Bonnycrest.
Way down on the waterfront.
Bonnycrest, you mean?
I guess so.
That's the one that they built all the condominiums around?
Oh yeah, Bonnycrest is in there.
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
That was the
one.
Lee and Perrins.
Well, that brick, that place has been ruined because that house was way back on the waterfront. Beautiful on that. And they put all those houses in there and ruined the whole damn thing. There's nothing to it. Of course, as I say, I don't know what the devil had ever done with it, unless they did that, but question.
You live here right next to the Newport Bridge. Were you living in this house when the bridge was being
Yeah, we
built?
just got over here.
You had?
We had just got over here because we'd seen the view out of the window before the bridge came in. But we just about got here at the time they started on the bridge. And at first it was kind of an annoyance, and after a while it got a bit of an annoyance because the wife, she kept awake, why I don't know, listening to cars going over the bridge.
Once it was built.
Huh?
Yeah. After the bridge was completed, you
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was noisy. And it still is in the summertime. There's cars roaring out across there all the time, and you can't go out in your yard without hearing it, you know what I mean? It's just a rackety noise all the.
Well, that's too bad.
So, it isn't what you'd call wonderful, but it isn't bad either, because everybody comes in, looks out the window, and say, "Oh, isn't that beautiful across there?"
It is a beautiful vista
Yeah,
you
but
have.
if you didn't see the bridge, it would be much prettier.
Yes.
But you see, we got a view right across to Rose Island at that time.
Right.
That's another thing that I think is kind of foolish. I got a paper sent me by the Historical Society called Save the Bay.
Oh.
It told about the lighthouse on Rose Island.
Yes.
Mr. Champlin up the Redwood says that lighthouse was built in 1823. This party, whoever wrote this other article, says it was opened as a lighthouse in 1870. Well, I was talking to Gladys about it the other day. Well, she says maybe he means that house that's there now. Well, either one of them say anything about any reproduction, any additions to the thing. So now the question is, was it built in 1823 or was it built in 1870? That's a question that arises right now.
Yeah. Well, I hope somebody checks that out, because that's a big difference.
Well, of course, the paper, the Daily News, has got an article in the paper, who wants to buy the Rhode Island lighthouse of 1823. So they've taken it for granted that it's 23. But this party, his name is David Donovan, whoever he is, I don't know, says the lighthouse was 1870. 1870 sounds awfully late to me. I don't know why.
It does to me,
It does.
Yeah.
It does. And of course, another thing about Rhode Island, in an article I got from the government stating that it was known as Fort Hamilton, or it was to be called that. But the fort was never completed. And there's only parts of the fort still there. And of course they're trying to preserve that as much as they can. But what's there, I don't know. I haven't any idea.
What did you think when you knew that, was your reaction when they were going to build the bridge? Right.
Sorry?
What was your reaction when you found out they were
I
going to
think
build the
everybody
Newport
was
Bridge?
in favor of it. They were sick and tired of the Jamestown ferry. I don't know why. But
Did you ever take the ferry? Did you ever go?
Oh, we used to take the ferry a lot. Yeah, we used to go over there a lot.
Yeah.
Sure. Different ones. Yeah. Yeah, we used to, when I was a kid, we used to go picking blueberries and blackberries over in Jamestown. We'd go over on the ferry, you know.
Oh, I bet that was fun.
Yeah, it was. We go up to the north end of the island. My father knew a man that was up there. I can't tell you his name now, I don't remember. He lived up there on the north end of the island somewhere. And he owned all these fields, and they were full of blueberries and blackberries. We used to go pick them. We used to do that a lot.
That was nice.
5 or 6 or 7 would get together and go up there. Pick up these things. Yeah, it was an easy place to grow up on. We had a lot of fun as kids in the area. It was always down the pier, the Van Zandt Avenue pier. Tried diving off and swimming off. Some of the people we knew, good swimmers, and they were good swimmers. There was quite a few of them, but one of them we knew, a man named Clyde James. He would dive off the Vans Avenue pier and wind up over in Jamestown.
Oh my goodness.
And they had a contest here one time where they swam from the Van Zandt Avenue pier to the 40 steps. 5 or 6 of them did it. Jack Morgan is one of them. You see him listed now in those ice waters of New Year's.
Goodness.
Being down the beach.
Boy.
Of course, he's a man, he must be a man close on to his 70s now, if not more.
Right.
But in those days, he was a crackerjack swimmer, a good swimmer. There was a girl named Alice Piltz. She lived down here on 2nd Street. Her brother was George Piltz now. I don't know whether you know of him or not. He had
Yes.
Bowen's Wharf one time. Well, she would know of her father's ship coming into the harbor, and she'd dive off the pier and swim out to it.
Oh my goodness.
And the old man would be greatly embarrassed because she was the first one that we knew around here that had a one-piece bathing suit.
I was going to ask you what they used for bathing suits.
Yeah. She only had a one-piece bathing suit, and he had to drag her on board the ship, cover her over. But they were all good swimmers and good divers. There was another girl, Minkler, her name was. What she couldn't do diving wasn't worth talking about. Just down this pier down here on Bayside Avenue.
Hmm.
And of course they had another group down on the Elm Street pier. We had two different groups. And we used to have a little small 3 or 4 piece orchestra down there, and they're dancing down there at night.
Oh, fun.
And that was stopped because the people didn't like the noise.
Oh, dear.
And things like that. We had a lot of great time. I used to play violin in those days. We had a in the church, St. Paul's, we had a birthday celebration for all the people in the church that had birthdays.
Oh, yes.
So of course I was there. And they had on a screen 38 pictures of people that were in the building. But most of them were baby pictures or grown up from 8 to 10 years old and so forth, up.
Yeah.
So they offered, or they said, they asked the question, how many do you recognize? Well, the girl that was sitting next to me at the dinner table, she recognized 17. And as I say, I told you, I guess, that we don't know who got the biggest number. We never have found out. Then they had a game with 15 questions about things. The word ended up in AGE. And of course, there were lots of words that did that.
Yeah.
But the way the question was worded, sometimes it was a little bit difficult to find them. It wasn't hard, but it wasn't, what you call it, easy.
Sounds like a fun evening.
So it was quite a day, quite an afternoon. We had it after church, you know, and we went down into one of the recreation rooms downstairs. They had it all set up for it. And of course, the minister there now, name is Ripley. He is a cook, and he had a party the other day. They invited the women, the men and their wives to it. There was about 25 went to it, and he had a turkey, a 27-pound turkey.
My goodness.
And he had pieces of white meat. It was about that long and about that wide. The breast side of the turkey, you know. They were that thin, the way he cut them.
Well, that's real art, isn't it?
Oh.
To be able to carve like that.
He makes cakes. He made a birthday cake for the birthday party that night, that afternoon. And all green trim on it and white covering. Yeah, he's really quite good. He's a man that's very interesting.
Well, that's nice. Must make a big difference in your congregation.
Well, we had, peculiarly, they had a woman. The only one we've ever known of or seen before as a minister. And I don't think many of the people liked her. She just wasn't it.
Oh, that's too bad.
And she's got a church now up in Massachusetts somewhere. And this fellow came in. He'd been here about, I don't know, not over 3 or 4 months.
Oh, so he's
4
new.
months, I guess.
New then.
5 months. I don't know how long he's been here. He hasn't been here very long. Anyhow, everybody likes him. He thinks he's wonderful.
That's good.
And his wife is a nice person. She's very interesting.
Well, I think, just wanted to ask you one more question about the bridge here. After it was built and Bayside Avenue was cut in half, how did that make you feel about your neighborhood?
It didn't make us feel anything. I think it made all the people that was calling on houses on Bayside Avenue the worst. They would come here wanting to know if this was number 4 Bayside. We'd tell them no, it was 32.
Yeah.
Bayside's on the other side of the bridge. And that was the biggest problem.
Yeah.
It's got over now. I think it's passed. I had an idea myself at the time to write, at the time when the bridge was blocking the street, I was gonna write to the city and ask them if they put up a sign, Bayside Avenue North and Bayside Avenue South, so
That
they
would
would,
make sense, yeah.
so they would be able to separate them.
Yeah.
But it changed, and it changed itself, and we very seldom get anybody now looking for the other side of the bridge. They know where it is.
Do you feel cut off from the rest of the point?
Well, you see, the biggest part at the time, when we want to get anybody that we know were strangers, we tell them, look for the Naval Hospital gate.
I see.
See?
Right.
And they find it right off the rail from that.
But do you personally feel cut off from the point? More isolated
Oh, no,
now?
this is the point.
Yeah.
This is the point. This is still the point. We used to play up here as kids, you know.
Did you?
Oh, sure.
Well,
You know where the food mart is over there?
Yes.
Well, in that grounds, there was a little bit of a small fort. And there was a creek went up and through there, a stream of water. Of course, the stream of water, when we knew it as a kid, it wasn't very big. It was just big enough for minnows to go in. That's about all. It was a fairly good-sized river, apparently, or stream, anyhow, that went up to the back of the Malbone house.
Oh, my goodness. All the way.
Yeah. And they had cannons up there to protect it. And they were over there in that where that supermarket is now. Yeah, sure. Oh, I can remember all of those things. I can never forget that. I had a BB gun. The first one I ever owned and the last one. And we was fooling around with kids there, you know. Wanted to stick their head up and just shoot at him, you know. One kid stuck his head up and I fired a BB gun, hit him right there.
Oh, right between the eyes.
That killed me from guns, right there. I never touched a gun since.
Looks like you're both very lucky.
Oh, lucky. You ain't kidding.
Boy.
I'll never forget it. Never. Yeah. Yeah, the only house that I know of in this area until Dad started and my uncle started building these houses was this blue one across the street over there. That was built by a man named Blessing. He was the librarian of the War College.
Huh.
What he ever had such a big house for, I don't know, but he had it. And of course the Worcester Higgin was down here on this corner, down below us here, and that was where the Naval Hospital is now. That belonged to a man named Maitland. And he was a wealthy man. And that was his home. And it was a beautiful estate, I guess.
Yeah.
The way they speak of it, because it took up all that land, Naval Hospital.
It must have been, yeah.
I have never seen a picture of it. I wished I could find one. But I can remember when they started building Naval Hospital. I can remember that.
Do you remember them moving the house?
Huh?
Do you remember having the big house moved for the Naval Hospital?
No.
Do you remember that?
No. I don't remember that at all. The only thing I do remember is the building of some of the building of the Naval Hospital. Now I don't mean all of it, because they've added to it 5 or 6 different times.
Yes, I have.
They're putting onto it all the time. Yeah, that's quite a, when they took that over, it was quite a thing. But at one time, I guess all this land up here was more or less field. Battery Street was a part of a field at one time. And of course, one time, Washington Street was closed off. You couldn't get through after you got by Battery Park.
Oh, really?
Oh yeah, there was a house in the middle of the road,
For
right
goodness
across the
sake.
street. And when they moved it, they added it onto the Cynical. It's a part of the Cynical now,
Oh.
when they put the street through. And of course the bridge fixed it up and made it work. But I can remember that. To get to the Van Zandt Avenue Pier, you went down, you know where Ada Bethune lives?
No.
Well, it's the last house on the waterfront
Oh.
on Van Zandt Avenue, up this end. Well, you went by her house, you went down a stairway, and then you walked on the gangway between the water on the land. You walk that up and you jumped over the Van Zandt Avenue to the Van Zandt Avenue Pier. That's how you got up there.
Oh.
That is, unless you come down Van Zandt Avenue.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Sure.
Wow.
When they moved that house, they added it onto the convent, and it's still there.
Oh.
So the house has been taken out, but that's it.
Huh.
At one time, we owned that property that's out there where that digger dirt is.
Uh-huh.
That was a part of our land. That's taken out now too. That's gone.
Well, you have a beautiful spot here, and a lovely. Must have been a very nice place to grow up.
It was fun. I guess any section of a city is a good place to grow up. You know. You hear about these poor sections. Of course, you get them all over the place. Our poor section here was in those days was West Broadway. You know, because that's where all the colored people were.
Yeah.
Go up through there, and that's all you find. But then you would find the bigger ones, the ones that had a little bit of money. They were moving all over the place. Sure.
And those areas are changing too.
Oh well, a lot of them had money.
Yep.
Downing, you know, Downing Block that's on Bellevue Avenue was a colored man. He owned it. And there was another one that was he had been an ambassador to some place at one time. He was a dentist here in Newport. He lived up there on Division Street, I think. Gladys Bolthouse has got a better memory of names than I have. I can't remember names at all anymore.
Well, I thank you very much for
Well,
giving me your time and sharing your
I don't
knowledge
mind
with
doing
me.
that. That's not bothering me at all.
I've learned a lot, and the
I'm
Historical
glad
Society
you've,
is...
Well, if you're interested in history, Newport is the place.
It is, it is. I'm learning more and more every day myself. I have a lot.
Between Newport and
To know,
Jamestown, the history, both of them are pretty close.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, Portsmouth and Middletown is added to it.
Yeah.
And of course, you do get out as far as the Common Fence Point when you have your Battle of Rhode Island stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I've run into a man out there that wrote the Battle of Rhode Island, and I sent a Xerox copy of it to my friend in England, and he wrote back. He said it was very, 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 what did he call it? He didn't say objectionable, but he meant that it was very one-sided.
Oh. Oh dear.
This man was more for the American forces.
I see.
But he has found a cannon that was off a British vessel that was wrecked when they wrecked the vessels out here. And he's got it out there in the Portsmouth Historical Society now. Came off the HMS Falcon.
Oh.
And he's the one that wrote this objectionable, as far as my English friend is concerned.
I see.
I got a long letter from him yesterday. You can shut that thing off if it's...
Okay. Well,
if-
thank you. I just want to
Well,
thank you again.
I don't want that to get
And
onto that.
Thank you for the Historical Society, too, for
Well,
sharing your memories with us. This is Ann Damon for the Newport Historical Society. This concludes my second interview with Mr. Elton Manuel. This is the third of 3 sides that were taped on February 13th, 1984.